You see, this store is for people who understand luxury, not people who look like they wandered in by mistake.
Take a good look around. Everything here costs more than you probably make in a year.
I'm not causing a problem, sir. I'm simply looking at your merchandise.
Don't pretend you're a customer. I know exactly what kind of people walk into my store, and you're not one of them. Security! Remove him from my store immediately!
The store fell silent as Roland's order echoed across the showroom. William kept his composure as the security guards approached, refusing to give the CEO the reaction he wanted. What Roland Collins didn't know was that the man he just threw out of his store owned 500 million reasons to burn it down. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The doors of Voss Maison slid open like the gates of a place that didn't want him there. William Weston walked in anyway. He was 44 years old, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped hair, and the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need an audience. He wore dark jeans, a plain olive shirt, and clean white sneakers. A simple gold chain sat at his collar. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, no watch worth mentioning, no logo in sight. His late wife Celestine used to say, "The man who needs a label to feel powerful has no power at all." William had never forgotten that. The store was everything money could buy, and taste could arrange. Gold-trimmed glass cases lined the marble floors. Silk scarves were folded like origami under soft lighting. Leather goods sat on pedestals like museum pieces. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something expensive that didn't have a name. Everything in here had a price tag designed to make ordinary people feel small. William didn't feel small. He moved slowly through the floor, hands clasped loosely behind his back, studying the merchandise the way a man studies something he's thinking seriously about. He stopped at a display case near the center of the room. Inside, a hand-stitched leather portfolio case sat under a warm spotlight. The stitching was tight, even, deliberate. Real craftsmanship. He leaned in closer, reading the detail in the seams. $4,200. He'd spent more on lunch. "Excuse me, sir?" He looked up. A young woman was walking toward him with a genuine smile. Early 20s, warm brown eyes, her Voss Maison uniform pressed neat. Her name tag read Yolanda. "I couldn't help but notice you looking at that one," she said, stopping a respectful distance away. "That's actually one of my favorites in the whole store. We have it in a deep burgundy that just came in last week. Would you like me to grab it so you can compare?" William smiled. "A real one?" "Yeah, I'd like that." Yolanda turned toward the back of the floor. She made it 4 steps. "Yolanda." The voice came from the left, flat, clipped, and sharp as a paper cut. A woman in a fitted charcoal blazer was crossing the floor toward them with the kind of walk that said, "I own this space." Her hair was pulled back tight. Her smile was already in place before she finished moving. A practiced, professional smile that had nothing warm behind it. Petra Langwell, store manager. William could tell from the way the other staff members near the register suddenly found something very interesting to look at on the floor. "I'll take it from here," Langwell said to Yolanda without looking at her. Yolanda hesitated for just a half second, barely noticeable, then nodded and stepped away. Langwell turned to William. The smile stayed exactly where it was. "Good morning," she said. "Is there something I can help you with?" "Just browsing," William said. Simple, unbothered. Something shifted behind Langwell's eyes. Subtle, but there. "Of course," she said. "I do want to let you know. This is a curated experience store. We ask that guests who are browsing book an appointment in advance." She tilted her head slightly. Polite, firm, immovable. It helps us give everyone the proper attention they deserve." William looked at her for a moment. There were no appointment signs anywhere in the store, no language about it on the windows outside. No one had stopped the white couple near the scarf display, who'd been wandering for the past 10 minutes without being helped by anyone. "I don't see that posted anywhere," he said. "It's our standard policy," Langwell said. The smile didn't move, not 1 millimeter. "I'm already here," William said, "and I'm looking at that portfolio case." "I understand that, sir." Her voice dropped 1/2 degree in temperature. "But without an appointment, I'm not able to have our associates assist you today. I'd be happy to help you schedule something for later this week." "I don't need assistance," William said. "I need to look at the case." The air between them went tight. Langwell opened her mouth to respond, and then the elevator at the back of the store opened. The sound of it, that soft, clean ding, cut right through the tension on the floor. William didn't turn around immediately, but he heard the shift in the room, the way the staff near the register straightened up almost without realizing it, the way Langwell's eyes moved past him and stayed there. He turned slowly. A man in a dark, perfectly fitted suit stepped off the elevator, and the entire room changed. Roland Collins owned every room he walked into. That was the thing about men like him. They didn't just enter a space, they took it over. Broad shoulders, dark suit without a single wrinkle, silver starting to creep into his dark hair at the temples. He was 52 years old and looked like a man who had never once been told no, and genuinely couldn't imagine what that would feel like. His eyes swept the floor, the way a general surveys a battlefield. And then they landed on William. The whole thing took maybe 3 seconds. Collins looked at the jeans, looked at the olive shirt, looked at the plain sneakers, and somewhere behind those sharp, pale eyes, a decision was made. Quick, certain, completely without question. William watched it happen in real time. Collins didn't lower his voice, didn't pull Langwell aside for a quiet word, didn't pretend to be diplomatic about it. He just looked at his store manager across the floor, past William, like William wasn't even worth addressing directly, and said it loud enough for half the store to hear. "Petra!" His voice was flat and hard. "Why is this man still in here?" The room went still. A woman near the scarf display stopped mid-reach. 2 staff members at the register froze. Somewhere behind William, he heard the soft sound of someone pulling out a phone. "This isn't a mall," Collins said. William turned to face him. Steady, unhurried. "I'm a customer." Collins's eyes finally moved to William directly. He looked him up and down, slowly, deliberately, the way someone examines something they're deciding whether to throw away. "A customer." He let the word sit there for a second, like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. The corner of his mouth pulled up. Not quite a smile. Something colder than that. "In here," he gestured around the store with one hand. The marble floors, the silk displays, the gold-trimmed cases. All of this. "Son, our customers don't dress like they just came from a bus stop." A sharp breath came from somewhere behind William. A woman near the window. William didn't move, didn't blink. His voice stayed completely level. "I'd like to finish looking at the merchandise." Collins tilted his head, the cold, almost smile still sitting on his face. "I'm sure there's a Target on 42nd Street that would love to have you." He straightened his cufflinks. Casual, unbothered, completely in control. "You'll find it much more," he paused, savoring the word, "accessible." A few feet away, Yolanda had gone absolutely still, her eyes wide, staring at the floor. Langwell said nothing. Nobody said anything. "Clark!" Collins snapped his fingers twice, sharp, quick, like he was calling a dog. The security guard near the entrance straightened up immediately. Clark Harrow was big, uniformed, mid-30s, with an honest face that was currently doing everything it could not to show what he was thinking. "Escort him out. Right now." Clark moved across the floor. His jaw was tight. His eyes didn't quite meet William's. "Sir," Clark said quietly, "I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." William looked at him. "You know this is wrong." Clark said nothing, but his hand closed around William's arm, firm and steady, and began moving him toward the door. William didn't pull away, didn't raise his voice, didn't plant his feet. He walked, chin level, back straight, like a man who had decided a long time ago that his dignity was the one thing no one could ever physically remove from him. Around him, the whole store watched. Phones were out now. 3, maybe 4 of them. Screens pointed in his direction. A woman near the window had her hand pressed flat against her chest like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Langwell stood perfectly still, watching, her professional smile finally gone. Collins watched too, arms crossed, expression settled into something that looked almost like satisfaction. William passed the display case with the leather portfolio, the one with the tight, even stitching, the one Yolanda had offered to bring him in Burgundy. He didn't look back at it. Clark pushed the heavy front door open, and the cool air of Fifth Avenue hit William in the face. He stepped through. The door swung shut behind him, a soft, heavy, final sound. William stood on the sidewalk. The city kept moving. Cabs, pedestrians, a food cart on the corner with steam rising off it. Nobody out here knew what had just happened 15 feet away behind that gold-trimmed glass. Nobody out here cared. William checked his watch. Plain steel. No brand name on the face. 9:22 in the morning. He had been inside Voss Maison for less than 8 minutes. He stood there on the pavement, hands loose at his sides, breathing slow and even. His face was still calm, his eyes were clear. But somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he kept locked up tight and rarely visited, something old and familiar was stirring. Something that had been sitting quietly for 25 years, patient as stone, waiting for exactly this moment. He didn't move. He didn't need to. He just stood there on Fifth Avenue in his jeans and his olive shirt, and he let the feeling settle into him like a decision being made. 90 seconds passed. Then the doors burst open behind him. The doors hit the wall so hard the glass shook. William turned around. Diane Pruitt came out of that store like the building was on fire. She was early 50s, sharp-featured, her dark hair coming loose from the bun she'd pinned it into that morning. Her pencil skirt made her stride short and urgent, but she was moving as fast as her legs would carry her. Her laptop bag swung wildly off one shoulder. Her face was the color of copy paper. She had been upstairs. Board prep meeting, 14th floor. Her assistant had shoved a tablet in front of her mid-sentence. "You need to see this right now," showing the lobby security feed. She had watched the whole thing play out on a 5-inch screen and had been moving toward the elevator before it was even finished. She stopped in front of William, breathing hard, one hand raised like she was flagging down traffic. "Mr. Weston." She could barely get the words out. "Mr. Weston, I am so... Please, just... Diane." The voice came from behind her. Collins had followed her out, moving at a controlled pace, the walk of a man who didn't run for anything or anyone. He stepped through the doorway onto the sidewalk, straightening his jacket, looking between Pruitt and William with an expression that said he was already preparing to manage whatever this was. Pruitt spun to face him, and then she said it. "He's our $500 million investor, Roland." Her voice cracked on the number. "He's our investor." The words landed like a brick through a window. Collins stopped walking. Everything stopped, really. The careful, controlled expression on his face. The one that had been so sure of itself 2 minutes ago inside that store. Fractured. just for a second. Just long enough for everyone standing on that sidewalk to see it happen. His mouth opened slightly, closed again. Around them, 4 or 5 customers who had drifted outside after the ejection stood watching with their phones still raised. A couple from out of town, older, matching sneakers, a camera around the man's neck, hadn't moved from the spot where they'd stopped to watch. The woman had both hands over her mouth. Collins's eyes moved to William. Really looked at him this time. Not the jeans, not the shirt. Him, the face, the stillness. The complete and total absence of panic or hurt or desperation in William's expression. Just a man standing on a sidewalk, hands loose at his sides, watching Collins understand exactly what he had done. The recovery came fast. Men like Collins had been recovering in public their whole lives. The smile appeared, smooth, warm, practiced to a shine, and he stepped forward with his right hand already extended. William. His voice dropped into its boardroom register. Friendly, generous. The voice that closed deals over dinner. I had absolutely no idea. This is a massive misunderstanding, and I take full responsibility. William looked at the hand. He didn't move. He let the silence stretch out. 3 full seconds. 4. While Collins's hand hung there in the air between them. On the sidewalk. In front of every camera. In front of every witness. Then William said, quietly, and with complete calm, I know. He did not take the hand. Collins's smile stayed on his face, but something behind it flickered and died. His fingers curled slowly back toward his palm. Pruitt looked like she wanted the sidewalk to swallow her whole. She turned to William, her voice low and urgent. Mr. Weston, please, if we could just go back inside and speak privately. I don't think I'll be going back inside, William said. Simple, final, like a door closing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He typed a single text, short, just a few words, and slipped it back into his pocket. Then he looked up at Collins one last time. Not with anger, not with hurt, with something far more uncomfortable than either of those things. Understanding. Like he had always known, this was exactly how it would go. My attorney will be in touch, William said. He turned and walked to his waiting car. The driver already had the door open. William got in, the door shut with a clean and quiet click, and the car pulled smoothly into Fifth Avenue traffic. On the sidewalk, Roland Collins stood in front of his flagship store with cameras still pointed at him, his hand hanging at his side, watching $50 million worth of quarterly projections disappear into the back of a black car. He was still standing there when the car turned the corner and was gone. The city slid past the window in a blur of glass and steel. William sat in the back of the car and said nothing. His driver, a quiet man named Gerald, who had worked for him for 6 years, knew better than to talk. He just drove, eyes forward, and let the silence sit undisturbed. William watched the buildings go by. His jaw was tight. Not trembling. Tight. The way a man holds himself together when he's decided that falling apart isn't an option. His hands rested flat on his thighs, perfectly still. Anyone looking at him from the outside would have seen a calm man taking a quiet ride across Midtown Manhattan. They would have been wrong. That evening, the hotel suite was dim and still. William had sent room service away untouched. He sat in the chair by the window with a glass of water he hadn't drunk, the city glittering 40 floors below him, and he let the memory come. He didn't fight it. There was no point. It had been waiting all day. He was 19 years old. It was a Thursday in November, cold enough that his breath made small clouds in the air. He had just finished a double shift at the warehouse, 12 hours of loading and unloading freight, and he still smelled like cardboard and industrial soap. but he had stopped at the apartment first and changed into his best clothes. Dark slacks, a button-down shirt he had ironed himself that morning. His good shoes, the ones he kept in a box under the bed. He had $340 in his wallet, every cent of it earned. 3 months of saving, cutting back on everything, eating rice and beans 4 nights a week so that he could walk into a store and buy Celestine something real, something beautiful, something that said, "I see you. You deserve the best things in this world, and I am going to spend my whole life making sure you get them." The Voss Maison boutique on Michigan Avenue had a silk scarf in the window. Ivory and gold, hand-printed, delicate as a whisper. Celestine had pointed at it 2 months earlier as they walked past, hadn't even stopped, just glanced at it and smiled that quiet smile of hers, and William had filed it away like a promise he intended to keep. He pushed open the door and walked in. The sales associate, young, blonde, with a careful smile, looked up from behind the counter. The smile stayed exactly where it was. Didn't warm up, didn't move toward him. William told her he was looking for the ivory and gold silk scarf, the one in the window. She looked him over, slowly. The way Collins had looked him over this morning, 25 years later, in a different city, in a different store, wearing a different face over the exact same expression. Then she said, "Those are display pieces, I'm afraid. They're not available for purchase." William blinked. "The sign doesn't say that." "It's our policy," she said, already turning away. Already done with him. "Sorry, I can't help you." He stood there for a moment. $340 in his wallet. His best clothes on his back. The scarf right there in the window, 4 feet away, with a price tag that he could meet. Then he walked out. He stood on the sidewalk in the cold November air, with his hands in his pockets and his $340 still in his wallet. And he understood, with the particular clarity that only comes from being told something without words, that it had never been about the scarf. It had been about who they thought he was when he walked through that door. In the hotel suite, William was quiet for a long time. He got up slowly, crossed to the bedside table, and picked up the framed photograph he always traveled with. Celestine. 32 years old in the picture, laughing at something just off camera, her head tilted back, completely unguarded. It was his favorite photograph of her in the world. She had gotten her scarf eventually. A different store, a different day. He had saved up again and found one even more beautiful than the one in the window. She had worn it until the edges frayed. He set the photo down gently on the nightstand, face up toward the light. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, and stared at the floor. 25 years. A fortune built from nothing. A name that moved markets. And they had still looked at him like that. It hadn't changed. Not one single thing had changed. He reached for his phone. The phone rang twice before Trevor picked up. "William." His voice was already alert, even at this hour. That was the thing about Trevor Orendorff. The man was never fully off. 15 years of working together had taught William that Trevor slept with one eye open and both ears pointed at the door. "I saw the video." William paused. "How bad is it?" 200,000 views and climbing. A beat. "Your face isn't confirmed yet, but it's only a matter of time." William stood up from the edge of the bed and walked to the window. The city was still going full speed 40 floors below. It never really stopped, this city. Just kept moving. Indifferent and enormous, whether you were on top of the world or flat on your back. "Pull the investment," William said. "All of it." Silence on the other end. Not the silence of surprise. Trevor didn't surprise easy. But the silence of a man organizing his thoughts before he spoke. "Walk me through what you're thinking," Trevor said carefully. "I don't need to walk you through it. You saw the video." "I did," Trevor said. And I understand. But William, the letter of intent is signed. Voss Maison's refinancing deadline hits in 72 hours. Stuart Vance and that board are counting on your capital to survive it. Pulling out clean isn't just a phone call. There are legal mechanics involved, and Collins's team will fight every inch of it if they think you're walking. William was quiet for a moment. Below him, a taxi cut across 3 lanes without signaling. Then we fight every inch. Trevor exhaled slowly. All right, I'll start pulling the threads tonight. But William, give me the full picture first. Tell me everything that happened, in sequence, exactly as it went. William told him. All of it. Langwell and the fake appointment policy. Collins stepping off the elevator. The way he hadn't even addressed William directly, just talked past him like he was a piece of furniture someone had left in the wrong spot. The fingers snap, Clark's hand on his arm, the walk to the door, and Collins's voice. Son, our customers don't dress like they just came from a bus stop. Trevor was quiet for a long moment after that. When he spoke again, his voice had a new quality to it. Still controlled, still precise, but underneath it, something sharp had moved into place. Okay, he said. I've got everything I need. Let me work. William had barely set the phone down when it buzzed in his hand. A text from Taylor. Godfather, you need to call me. Now. He called her. She picked up before the first ring finished. Okay, so I've been watching this video since it hit 50,000 views. Taylor Weston Cross talked fast when she was locked in. Always had, since she was a little girl sitting at his kitchen table doing homework. It's at 200,000 now, and it is moving. The comments are, people are furious. Someone already identified the store. Someone else caught Collins in the background of the frame, and people are asking who he is. How long before they connect it to me? Honestly? 24 hours. Maybe less if a journalist gets the right tip. She paused. 2 reporters already reached out to me tonight, asking if I know who the man in the olive shirt is. I didn't confirm anything. But William. Her voice shifted, became something more careful. This story is already telling itself. People are sharing it because they've lived it. Every black man who's ever been followed in a store, questioned at a counter, made to feel like he doesn't belong somewhere he has every right to be. They're sharing this video. William looked at Celestine's photo on the nightstand. Hold the story, he said. Don't confirm anything yet. I need 72 hours. Okay. He could hear her reluctance. Okay, I'll hold, but I'm keeping everything ready. Keep it ready. He hung up and opened his laptop. Collins's PR team had already moved. A statement was live on Voss Maison's website. He read it slowly, twice. Voss Maison is committed to an exceptional and inclusive experience for all guests. We regret a miscommunication between a guest and store personnel earlier today. Store manager Petra Langwell has been placed on administrative leave while we conduct an internal review. We extend our sincerest apologies. Langwell. They had thrown Langwell straight under the bus without a second thought. Collins's name was nowhere in it. William closed the laptop. He picked up Celestine's photo one more time, held it for a moment, then set it face up beside the stack of legal files on the desk. 72 hours. He turned off the lamp and sat in the dark, already planning. Wednesday morning came in gray and cold. William was already awake when the sky outside his window shifted from black to the dull, flat color of old concrete. He hadn't slept much. Maybe 3 hours. He'd been up before 5, sitting at the desk in the dark with his legal files open in front of him and his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, thinking. His phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. Trevor. A single link. No message attached. William clicked it. The Voss Maison official statement had been updated overnight. the original placeholder paragraph replaced with something longer, more polished, clearly written by someone who charged $400 an hour. He read it slowly. Voss Maison deeply regrets the events that occurred at our Fifth Avenue flagship location yesterday morning. We have placed store manager Petra Langwell on administrative leave pending a full internal review. Senior leadership extends a personal and unreserved apology to the guest involved. Voss Maison has always been and will remain committed to providing a welcoming, dignified, and inclusive experience for every person who walks through our doors. We are taking immediate steps to ensure this standard is upheld across all of our locations. William read it a second time, then a third. Collins's name was not in it. Not once. The word CEO did not appear. Senior leadership did the work of burying him completely. Anonymous, collective, untouchable. Petra Langwell's name, however, appeared twice, clear as day. The store manager, who had followed an order she'd been given by the man standing right behind her, had been handed the entire weight of it, gift-wrapped, while Collins walked away without a scratch. William forwarded it to Trevor and Taylor. No comment. They would understand. Taylor called 11 minutes later. "You see this?" she said, without saying hello. "I saw it. They buried Langwell and built Collins a bunker." Her voice had that focused, clipped quality it got when she was angry and working at the same time. 1.4 million views on the video as of 20 minutes ago. The comments are, "William, people are furious. Not just about the video. They're talking about every time this has ever happened to them personally. It's opened something up." William leaned back in his chair. "What about the press?" A fashion blogger, Renee somebody, 3 million followers, posted a full thread last night demanding the man in the olive shirt come forward. She called it the most important video she'd seen all year. Taylor paused. 2 major outlets have now reached out to me directly. Not just freelancers. I'm talking about reporters with audiences. Still hold it. I know. Holding. Another pause. There's something else. You have friends, people who don't even know you're involved, posting about this. I counted 3 public figures this morning who shared the video and talked about racial profiling in luxury retail. It's becoming its own conversation completely separate from you. William was quiet for a moment. What about inside the store? Taylor's tone shifted slightly. That's actually why I called first. I heard from Trevor's office this morning, Yolanda Breen, the associate who tried to help you. William sat forward. Langwell called her last night, Taylor said, from her personal cell, while on administrative leave, told her to be, and I'm quoting what she told Trevor's assistant, very careful about what she says in official channels. The room felt very quiet. She's scared, Taylor said softly. She's a single mom. That job isn't just a job for her. William stood up from the desk and walked to the window. The gray city spread out below him, wet and indifferent. Get me Trevor. Trevor already knew. He had been briefed an hour earlier. I've drafted a formal communication to Vance's office, he said. Language is clean and direct. Any demonstrable retaliation against store employees, including Ms. Breen, constitutes an immediate material breach and grounds for deal termination. I can have it filed within the hour. File it, William said. Already sending. Trevor paused. William, I want you to understand what Collins is doing here. The statement, Langwell, the pressure on Breen. This is a man who is very good at making problems disappear quietly. He's done it before. He fully expects to do it again. William looked at his reflection in the hotel window. Jeans, olive shirt. Same clothes he'd put on this morning without thinking about it. The same ones he'd worn yesterday into that store. I know exactly what he's doing, William said. He picked up his briefcase from the desk and laid his legal files inside it, one by one, neat and ordered. "Set the alarm for 5:30 tomorrow," he told Trevor. "I want to be dressed and ready before they open the building." He snapped the briefcase shut. Tomorrow, he was going to walk into their boardroom dressed exactly like this. The Voss Maison corporate offices occupied the top 4 floors of a building on West 57th Street, all glass and polished stone. The kind of architecture designed to make you feel small before you even got inside. William didn't feel small. He walked through the lobby at 8:52 a.m. with Trevor at his left shoulder and 2 associates trailing behind them. He wore dark jeans, a plain olive shirt, and clean white sneakers. The same outfit he'd worn into the flagship 2 days ago. The same outfit he'd been ejected in. He hadn't chosen it carelessly. The receptionist looked up from her desk, took in William's clothes, and her eyes moved with a reflex she couldn't quite control. A quick flicker of assessment, there and gone in under a second. Then she looked at Trevor in his sharp charcoal suit, and her professional smile snapped back into place. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Trevor Orendorff," Trevor said, sliding a business card across the counter. "We have a 9 o'clock with Mr. Vance." Stuart Vance was already in the boardroom when they arrived. He was in his early 70s, white-haired, lean, with the careful stillness of a man who had made serious decisions for serious money for a very long time. He wore a navy suit that had probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He stood when they entered, extending his hand to Trevor first, then to William. His eyes moved over William's clothes. He said absolutely nothing about them, but William watched the recognition land, quiet, precise, like a key turning in a lock. Vance understood immediately what the outfit meant. William could see it in the slight pause before the handshake, the way his gaze held for just a half-second longer than was necessary. Good. That was the point. They sat. Trevor placed a bound document on the table, the revised term sheet, clean and professional, tabbed at the relevant sections. William folded his hands on the table and waited. Vance looked at the document without touching it yet. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to say on behalf of this board that what occurred on Tuesday morning was completely unacceptable." Completely. His voice was measured but firm, the voice of a man who understood liability as well as he understood decency. There is no version of those events that reflects the standards of this company. William nodded once, said nothing. Trevor opened the term sheet. "Mr. Vance, my client remains prepared to honor the full scope of the original investment under 3 revised conditions." He walked through them clearly and without theater. First, an independent DEI audit of all Voss Maison retail locations within 90 days, conducted by a third-party firm chosen jointly. Second, mandatory anti-discrimination training protocols implemented across all customer-facing staff within 6 months, with compliance reporting directly to the board. Third, a formal public acknowledgement of Tuesday's events, with specific attribution. Vance listened without interrupting. His hands were flat on the table, perfectly still. When Trevor finished, William leaned forward slightly. "I'm going to tell you what happened Tuesday," William said. "Not the version that ended up in your press statement. The actual version." He told it plainly. No raised voice, no anger, no performance, just facts in sequence. Langwell's invented appointment policy. The way Collins had talked past him like he wasn't in the room. The finger snap, Clark's hand on his arm, the walk to the door. And then Collins's words, delivered in front of a room full of witnesses and at least 4 recording devices. "Son, our customers don't dress like they just came from a bus stop." He watched Vance's jaw tighten. "That is a direct quote," William said. "There are multiple recordings that confirm it." The room was very quiet for a moment. Vance picked up the revised term sheet. He read it slowly, page by page. the way a man reads something he intends to remember. Then he set it down and looked at William directly. "Give me 24 hours," he said. "I want to present this to the full board myself. I believe I can bring them to yes." William looked at him steadily. "You have until tomorrow evening." Vance nodded. "That's fair." They shook hands across the table. Brief, firm, without performance. In the elevator going down, Trevor stood with his briefcase at his feet and his eyes forward. After a long moment, he said, "He'll take the terms." William watched the floor numbers drop. "Maybe," he said. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. William walked out into the building's polished stone atrium, jeans and olive shirt, and didn't look back. Collins found out about the meeting at 11:14 a.m. His assistant placed a single printed note on his desk. Mr. Orendorff and client met privately with Mr. Vance, 9 a.m., boardroom 2, and Collins read it twice without moving. Then he set it down, very carefully, and picked up his phone. Vance answered on the second ring. "Roland." His voice was neutral, carefully neutral, in the way that told Collins everything he needed to know about how that meeting had gone. "You met with Weston this morning." Not a question. "I met with his legal team, yes. They presented a revised term sheet. I told them I'd bring it to the full board." "You should have called me first." A pause. "This is a board matter, Roland. I am the CEO of this company." Collins's voice stayed controlled, but just barely. "Anything that touches the Weston deal touches my office. That's not a courtesy, Stuart. That's governance." "I'll have my assistant send you the term sheet," Vance said, with the calm of a man who had already made up his mind about something and wasn't going to argue about it on the phone. "We can discuss it at tomorrow's session." The call ended. Collins set the phone down on his desk and sat very still for a moment. Outside his corner office, the city moved in every direction. He looked at it without seeing it. His mind was already working. Fast, focused, the way it had worked through every problem that had threatened him over the past 30 years. He pressed the intercom. "Get me Harrison." Derek Harrison was Collins's outside counsel. Sharp, expensive, and deeply familiar with the kind of problems that needed to disappear quickly and quietly. He arrived within the hour, and they spoke for 40 minutes with the office door closed and the assistant told to hold everything. When Harrison left, Collins made his second call. Hartwell and Brugger Capital were a European private equity group, Munich-based, discreet, with a long history of providing bridge financing to luxury brands in transitional moments. Collins had worked with them once before, 8 years ago, in a situation he preferred not to think about too often. He reached their managing director, a man named Franz Ashby, directly. "I need a bridge," Collins said. $200 million. "I need it structured and wired by Friday morning." Ashby was quiet for a moment. "That's a short window, Roland." "I know what window it is. Can you do it?" Another pause. "At a premium." "Name the number." Ashby named it. Collins didn't flinch. He agreed, confirmed the wire details, and ended the call. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. $200 million wouldn't replace Weston's capital entirely. But it didn't need to. It just needed to buy the board enough room to breathe. 30 days, maybe 40, and strip away the urgency that was currently making Weston look indispensable. Take away the clock, and Weston's leverage went with it. His third call was the most important one. Clark Harrow picked up after 4 rings, uncertain. "Mr. Collins?" "Clark." Collins's voice was warm now, easy and generous, a completely different instrument than the one he'd used in the store on Tuesday. "I want you to know that I'm aware of the position the events of this week have put you in. That isn't fair to you, and I want to make it right." Clark said nothing. "I've instructed HR to prepare a severance package for you," Collins continued. 18 months' salary, full benefits continuation, a clean reference letter that says nothing but good things. He let that sit for a moment. All we'd need in return is a standard non-disclosure agreement. Standard language. Just protects the company from mischaracterizations of internal security procedures. He paused again. You have 72 hours to sign. The check gets cut the same day. Silence on the other end. Then, I'll read it over. Of course, Collins said warmly. Take your time. He hung up and allowed himself, for the first time since Tuesday morning, a small and private exhale. The bridge loan would neutralize the board. The NDA would silence the one witness who could directly confirm who had given the ejection order. And without Weston's capital as leverage, and without a credible witness, the entire thing became a PR inconvenience, rather than an existential threat. He had been in worse positions than this. He pulled up the financial projections on his screen, picked up his pen, and got back to work. Outside his window, the city moved and hummed and carried on as always, completely indifferent to the quiet war being waged 30 floors above it. The call came at 7:14 p.m. William was sitting at the desk in his hotel suite, jacket off, reading glasses on, working through a financial report he'd been ignoring since Monday. The city outside the window had shifted from gray daylight into the amber and blue of early evening, the skyline beginning to light up the way it did every night. Indifferent, beautiful, enormous. His phone buzzed. Stuart Vance. He picked it up on the second ring. Mr. Vance. Trevor looked up from the couch across the room where he'd been working through his own stack of documents. He set his pen down and watched William's face. William. Vance's voice was measured, but carried something underneath it. The particular quality of a man delivering news he was genuinely relieved to deliver. I've just come out of a full board session. I want you to hear this directly from me. A pause that lasted exactly long enough to feel significant. The board has voted to accept your revised terms. All 3 conditions. In full. William was quiet for a moment. The DEI audit, he said. The training protocols. The public acknowledgement. All of it, Vance confirmed. Unanimously. Another pause. And regarding Mr. Collins, he will be addressing his personal conduct with the board directly. I want to be transparent with you about that. It will be handled. William leaned back slowly in his chair. He looked at Trevor across the room, and something passed between them. Quiet, controlled, the particular satisfaction of 2 men who had done this long enough to know better than to celebrate before the ink was dry, but who both understood, in this moment, that the work had paid off. Thank you, Stuart, William said. I'll have Trevor confirm the paperwork in the morning. We'll be ready, Vance said. Good night, William. The call ended. Trevor was already standing. All 3? All 3. William set the phone down on the desk. Unanimously. Trevor picked up his pen, clicked it once, and set it back down. That was as close to a celebration as Trevor Orendorff ever got, and William had learned over 15 years to read it exactly for what it was. William called Taylor next. She picked up on the first ring. Tell me something good. Stand down, William said. The board accepted the terms. The story stays quiet. A long exhale on her end, the sound of 36 hours of held breath finally releasing. Okay. Good. Okay. He could hear her moving around, the sound of a chair, papers shifting. I'm keeping everything filed and ready, just so you know. Every document, Keep it ready, William said. But we're done for now. Understood. A pause. You okay? William looked at the window. The city glittered below him, 40 floors of indifferent light. Yeah, he said. I'm okay. He meant it. For the first time since Tuesday morning, he actually meant it. He ordered room service for the first time since he'd checked in. a proper meal. Steak, vegetables, a glass of good red wine. He ate slowly at the desk while the city went fully dark outside, and for the first time all week, he let his mind go somewhere other than strategy. He thought about Celestine, not the photograph on the nightstand, not the image itself, but her. The way she used to sit across from him at the kitchen table in Memphis on Sunday mornings, with both hands wrapped around her coffee mug, not saying anything, just being there. The way she laughed, sudden and completely unguarded, like something had caught her off guard, and she hadn't had time to be dignified about it. The way she had looked at him when he told her, 20 years ago, that he was going to build something real, something permanent. She hadn't said if, she'd said when. He thought about the young man who had walked out of a Chicago boutique with empty hands and $340 still in his pocket. That young man had wanted justice, had wanted someone to look him in the eye and say, "You were right. You belonged there. We were wrong." Maybe that was finally here. Trevor poured 2 small glasses from the hotel minibar, bourbon, modest label, and set one on the desk beside William's plate, without a word. They didn't toast, didn't make a speech about it. They just drank quietly. 2 men who had fought a careful, clean fight and come out the right side of it. William finished his meal, washed his face, turned off the lamp. He was asleep before midnight, the deep, uncomplicated sleep of a man who had done what was right and had the outcome to prove it. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., the deal would close. He was sure of it. The phone rang at 6:15 a.m. William was already half awake. The particular light sleep of a man whose body had learned, over decades, that the phone never rings before 7 with good news. He reached for it in the dark, saw Trevor's name on the screen, and sat up before he answered. "Talk to me." Trevor didn't ease into it. That wasn't his way, and William had always respected that about him. Collins wired a bridge loan overnight. $200 million from a European firm called Hartwell and Brugger. It hit the Voss Maison accounts at 4 a.m. William was quiet. His eyes moved to the window. The sky outside was the deep, bruised blue of very early morning, the city below still half asleep. "How much does that move the needle?" he asked. "Enough." Trevor's voice was careful and precise. "It doesn't replace your capital, but it gives the board cover to push the refinancing deadline back 30 days, which means your $500 million stops being an emergency and starts being a negotiation." Collins called an emergency board session for 7 a.m. using his CEO authority. "He's moving to reject your revised term sheet as commercially unviable." William stood up from the bed, walked to the window. Can he get the votes? He already did. 2 members who voted with Vance last night flipped this morning. I don't know what he offered them, but they're gone. A pause. There's more. William waited. Clark Harrow signed the NDA at 11:47 last night. The room felt very still. He signed it, William said flatly. The severance check was 18 months' salary. He has a family, William. A mortgage. I don't. Trevor stopped himself. When he spoke again, his voice was back to its careful, level register. The point is that he's legally bound now. He cannot make a statement about who gave the ejection order on Tuesday. He is the only direct eyewitness who heard Collins give the instruction verbally. And he's gone. William pressed one hand flat against the cold glass of the window. Below him, the city was beginning to wake up. The first taxis moving, the first lights coming on in office buildings, the first people on the sidewalks walking fast with their heads down. There's still the video, William said. The video shows the ejection. It shows Collins present, but it doesn't capture the verbal order clearly enough for legal purposes. Collins's team can argue he was responding to an existing situation rather than initiating one. Trevor paused. And then there's the statement. What statement? He heard Trevor exhale. Not dramatically, just the quiet exhale of a man delivering news he doesn't want to deliver. Collins's communications team released a new public statement 40 minutes ago. I'm sending it to you now. William's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his ear and opened the message. He read it once. Voss Maison has been made aware that the individual involved in Tuesday's store incident has a prior commercial relationship with this company that may have informed his characterization of events. We are committed to an accurate and complete account of what took place and caution against narratives that conflate personal business interests with broader social concerns. William read it again. It didn't name him. It didn't have to. Anyone who had been following the story, and hundreds of thousands of people had been following the story, would understand exactly who it was about and exactly what it was implying. He had a business agenda. He had manufactured outrage for leverage. The whole thing was a performance designed to extort a company that had simply made a mistake. That was what it was saying. Clean, deniable, and precise as a knife. William stood at the window for a long time without speaking. His free hand was at his side, completely still. His jaw was tight. Trevor gave him the silence. At 8:30, Vance called. His voice carried the weight of a man who had lost a vote he'd believed he had won, and was genuinely sorry about it, but who was also, unmistakably, explaining why there was nothing more he could do right now. The board's position has changed, William. I want you to know that my vote did not change, but I don't have the numbers anymore. A pause. I'm sorry. William said, I know you are, Stuart. He ended the call. Set the phone down on the desk. Stood in the middle of the hotel suite in the early morning light, completely still. He was 44 years old. He had built an empire from nothing. His name moved markets. And yet, here he was, right back on that Chicago sidewalk. Empty hands. Cold air. He stayed there for 11 minutes. Then he stood up straight, walked to the window one more time, and looked out at the city below. And something in his face changed. 11 minutes. That was how long William stood at that window without moving or speaking. Trevor sat in the chair behind him and waited. He didn't offer words of comfort or legal strategy or next steps. He just sat there, present and quiet, because he knew William well enough to know that this particular silence needed to be respected and not interrupted. The city moved below them, indifferent as always. Then William turned around. His face was different. Not angry. Anger was loud and expensive, and William Weston had never been a man who spent money he didn't need to spend. This was something else entirely. Quiet. Settled. The look of a man who had just made a decision so complete and so final that everything before it suddenly felt like preparation. They wanted the version of me that needed this deal, he said. His voice was calm and low. They're about to meet the version that doesn't. Trevor picked up his pen. William made 3 calls. He made them in sequence, without rushing, sitting at the desk with Celestine's photograph facing him and the city burning gold outside the window as the morning sun finally broke through the clouds. The first call was to Taylor. She answered immediately. She had been awake since Trevor called her at 6:30. William knew she had, because that was who she was. She didn't waste time. Tell me, she said. Release everything, William said. All of it. Tonight. A beat of silence, not hesitation, just the sound of a gear shifting into place. Everything I have is ready. The full video, your security details time-stamped account, the photos from outside the entrance, the pattern documentation across all 12 flagship locations. She paused. William, the pattern file is devastating. 5 years, 12 stores. Not one black store manager hired anywhere. Discrimination complaints buried in Chicago, Atlanta, and Houston. All documented. all sourced. How solid is it? Airtight. I've had 2 independent researchers verify it. Every claim has a paper trail. Her voice was sharp and focused now, the way it got when she was working. I've been sitting on this for 36 hours. I know exactly which outlet it goes to and exactly how it runs. Then run it, William said. Tonight at 10. Tonight at 10, she confirmed. He hung up and sat quietly for a moment. Then he picked the phone back up. The second call was to Trevor, who was sitting 6 feet away and answered by looking up from his notepad. The NDA Clark signed, William said. Tell me exactly what it covers. Word for word. Trevor had read it the moment it was filed. Of course he had. He opened his laptop, pulled up the document, and read the relevant clause aloud. The agreement was specific and narrow. It covered Clark's statement regarding the ejection incident on Tuesday morning at the Fifth Avenue flagship. It covered his account of the specific events of that specific day. It covered nothing else. It doesn't touch anything outside of Tuesday, Trevor said carefully, already seeing where William was going. Any prior incident he witnessed, any pattern of behavior, any other occasion on which he observed Mr. Collins's conduct toward employees or customers. He paused. There is a significant gap in the language. How significant? Significant enough that a first-year law student could drive a truck through it? Trevor set the laptop down. If Clark has witnessed anything else, anything at all that falls outside the scope of Tuesday, he is completely free to speak to it. Has he cashed the check? Trevor checked his notes. Not as of this morning. William nodded slowly. Reach out to him. Not to pressure him. I want that very clear. Tell him we understand the position he was put in. Tell him no one here holds Tuesday against him. And tell him that if there is anything outside the scope of that NDA that he feels is important, there is a legal path for him to speak to it safely. Trevor was already writing. I'll have someone call him within the hour. The third call was to Stuart Vance. Vance answered cautiously. William. Stuart. William kept his voice warm and genuine because he genuinely meant what he was about to say. I'm not calling to negotiate. I'm calling because I respected the way you conducted yourself this week, and I want you to know what's coming before it arrives. He paused. That's a courtesy I didn't have to extend. I'm extending it because I think you're a decent man who got outmaneuvered by someone who isn't. A long silence. Then Vance said quietly, I appreciate that, William. Get some rest, Stuart, William said. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He hung up. Set the phone down. Looked at Celestine's photograph. Then he leaned back in his chair and waited for 10 o'clock. At exactly 10:02 p.m., the story went live. William was sitting at the desk in his hotel suite, jacket on, tie off, a cup of coffee going cold beside his legal files. He watched the notification appear on his screen, the headline loading across the top of the page like a slow and inevitable sunrise. Voss Maison CEO ejected $500 million investor from his own store. And the man has been waiting 25 years for this moment. He read it once. Then he leaned back and let it go. The piece was thorough and devastating in the way that only true things can be. It opened with the video. Full, unedited, 93 seconds from the moment Collins stepped off the elevator to the moment the door swung shut behind William on Fifth Avenue. No cuts. No narration over it. Just the thing itself, exactly as it happened, in the sharp and unforgiving clarity of 4 different phone cameras stitched together. Below the video, William's name appeared for the first time publicly. The article laid out his story in plain, direct language. The son of a Memphis seamstress who built a private equity empire from nothing, who had turned down 3 previous opportunities to invest in Voss Maison, and who had walked into that store on Tuesday morning, dressed in jeans and a plain shirt, because he had wanted to see, with his own eyes, whether anything had changed since a 19-year-old version of himself had been quietly turned away from a Chicago boutique 25 years ago with 3 months of wages still in his pocket. The Chicago story ran in full. Every detail. The silk scarf, the invented policy, the sidewalk. Then came the pattern documentation. Taylor's research file, 5 years of records across 12 Voss Maison flagship locations, sourced and verified. The numbers were stark and simple and impossible to explain away. Not one black store manager hired in 5 years across any domestic location. Discrimination complaints from employees in Chicago, Atlanta, and Houston, filed, acknowledged, and quietly buried without consequence. 3 former employees, quoted by name, describing a workplace culture that made certain people feel, from their very first day, that they had walked into a place that had already decided they didn't fully belong there. The article didn't editorialize. It didn't need to. The first thing that moved was the stock. By 11 p.m., Voss Maison's NYSE after-hours price had dropped 7%. By 11:30, it was 11. By midnight, it had settled at 14% below its closing price, a number that translated, in real terms, to hundreds of millions of dollars of market value simply gone, dissolved into the night like smoke. The second thing was the partners. 2 of Voss Maison's 4 major retail partners, both household names, posted statements within 90 minutes of each other. The language was careful and corporate, the kind of language that legal teams write at 11 o'clock at night when their phones won't stop ringing. Both statements said, in different words, the same thing. We are closely monitoring the situation and remain committed to partnerships that reflect our values. That was the sound of 2 very large doors beginning to close. The third thing was Hartwell and Brugger. At 11:47 p.m., a brief communication went from their Munich offices to Voss Maison's board. Formal, precise, and quiet as a scalpel. Their bridge loan agreement contained a standard morality clause. In light of developing public information, that clause was now under active review. They would communicate their position within 48 hours. The floor that Collins had built under himself overnight was beginning to crack. And then Collins made it worse. Someone on his team, someone who still believed the situation was manageable, had arranged a live cable news interview for 11 p.m. Damage control. Get ahead of the story. Put a human face on it. Collins sat under the studio lights in his perfect dark suit and his perfect boardroom composure. And for the first 8 minutes, he was exactly what he always was. Smooth, articulate, completely in control of the room. Then the anchor asked him, simply and directly, whether he personally recognized William Weston when he ordered him removed from the store. Collins's composure slipped, just slightly, just enough. I don't personally know every customer who walks into one of our stores, he said. That's not how retail operations work at scale. The anchor looked at him. He wasn't a customer you failed to recognize, Mr. Collins. He was a $500 million investor in your company. Collins opened his mouth, closed it. That information wasn't available to me at the... Was his race available to you? The silence that followed lasted 4 seconds. 4 seconds of live television. The clip was on social media within 6 minutes. By 1 a.m. it had been viewed 2 million times. By morning, it was everywhere. Taylor texted William at 1:17 a.m. One word. Burning. William read it, set the phone face down on the desk, and closed his eyes. Trevor's phone rang at 7:43 a.m. He was already at the small desk in his own hotel room 3 floors below William, dressed and working, a half-eaten breakfast pushed to the side of the desk. He looked at the screen. Clark Harrow. He answered immediately. Mr. Harrow. Silence for a moment. Then a voice, careful, measured. The voice of a man who had been up most of the night thinking hard about something and had finally arrived at a decision he wasn't going to walk back from. "Mr. Orendorff, I need to talk to you." "I'm listening," Trevor said. He picked up his pen. Clark had read the article at midnight. He told Trevor this plainly, without decoration. He'd been lying awake anyway, had been lying awake since he signed the NDA, if he was honest, and his wife had shaken him at midnight and told him to just look at his phone already because the notifications weren't stopping. He'd read the whole piece sitting on the edge of his bed in the dark while his wife slept behind him. He'd read about William, about the empire built from nothing, about Tuesday morning in the store, which he had lived through himself, and which reading about in plain black and white felt different from having been there. Starker, somehow, more undeniable. He'd read about the Chicago boutique, and the 25 years, and the silk scarf, and the 3 months of saved wages. He sat on the edge of that bed for a long time. Then he reread the NDA, carefully. Every clause, every line, every word. He wasn't a lawyer, but he was a careful man, and he read it the way a careful man reads something that matters. He had been told it was standard language. He had been told it simply protected the company from mischaracterizations of security procedures. He had believed that. Reading it now, at midnight, after reading the article, he understood it differently. "It covers Tuesday," Clark told Trevor. "I can't talk about Tuesday. I understand that. I'm not calling about Tuesday." Trevor's pen was moving. "What are you calling about, Mr. Harrow?" 6 months ago." Clark's voice was steady. "Last March, there was an incident at the loading dock on the west side of the building. A black security guard named Damon, who'd been with the company 4 years. Mr. Collins came through the dock during a walkthrough, and Damon didn't move out of the way fast enough. That's the only way I know how to describe it. He was doing his job, checking a delivery manifest, and he didn't see Collins coming." Trevor said nothing. He wrote. "Collins stopped," Clark continued, "and he said, in front of me, in front of 2 other staff members and a delivery driver. He said, 'Are all my security staff this slow, or is it just you?' And then he said," a pause, brief but heavy. "He said something else. I'm not going to repeat it." But it was. It was the kind of thing that you don't forget. It was the kind of thing that tells you exactly what a person thinks. "Did you report it?" Trevor asked. "Filed a written HR report the same day. Detailed. I kept a copy. A beat. Nothing happened. I followed up 3 weeks later. Was told it had been reviewed and addressed internally. Damon left the company 2 months after that. I don't know if those 2 things are connected. I just know what I saw, and what I reported, and what happened after." Trevor set his pen down. "Mr. Harrow, I want to be very clear with you. The NDA you signed does not cover this incident. Not in any way. The language is specific to the events of last Tuesday. What you're describing falls entirely outside its scope. You are completely free to make a formal statement about what you witnessed in March." A long silence. "I know," Clark said quietly. "That's why I'm calling." By noon, Trevor had a formal recorded statement from Clark. Detailed, specific, corroborated by his original HR filing, which Clark photographed from the copy he'd kept in a folder at home and emailed over before 10 a.m. Trevor filed it with 2 civil rights attorneys and forwarded a copy to the board's independent legal counsel before lunch. Then he called William. "Pattern established," he said. "We have everything." William was quiet for a moment. Then, "What about Clark?" "He didn't cash the check," Trevor said. "I've already flagged the NDA itself to a labor attorney. The manner in which it was presented, the timeline, the pressure, the financial circumstances, may constitute witness coercion. We're holding that as a separate avenue. Another silence. Make sure he's protected, William said. Already on it. Trevor sent a single text to William after he hung up. Pattern established. We have everything. He looked at it for a moment, then set the phone down and got back to work. The meeting was called for 2 p.m. Saturday. Collins didn't know about it until 1:47. His assistant, a young woman named Priya, who had worked for him for 2 years and was, by that Saturday afternoon, actively updating her resume on her lunch break, knocked on his office door and told him that Mr. Vance had convened an emergency board session and that his presence was not required. Collins looked at her. What did you just say? Mr. Vance asked me to let you know the session is underway. She kept her voice neutral and her eyes steady. He said he'd be in touch when it concluded. Collins was already reaching for his phone before she finished the sentence. He called Vance, straight to voicemail. Called 2 board members he considered reliable. One didn't answer. The other picked up, said 3 words, "I can't talk," and hung up. He sat in his office alone, phone in hand, and understood for the first time that the walls were not just closing. They had already closed. He was on the outside of a room he used to own, and the people inside it were deciding his future without him. Stuart Vance sat at the head of the boardroom table and placed 6 items in front of the assembled members before he said a single word. The printed article, full length, with the video still image on the front page, the stock report showing the 14% after-hours drop, a 1-page summary of the Hartwell and Brugger morality clause communication, Clark Harrow's formal statement, the original HR report from March attached behind it, a letter, signed by 3 of Voss Maison's largest institutional shareholders, received that morning, demanding immediate executive accountability or threatening a formal review of board governance, and a legal memo from the board's independent counsel, 12 pages, outlining the company's full civil liability exposure under current evidence. He laid them out without comment. Let the board read. The room was very quiet for several minutes. Then Vance folded his hands on the table and spoke. "I'm not going to tell you what to think about what's in front of you," he said. "You can read. What I will tell you is this. I have been in business for 45 years, and I have never seen a set of circumstances better designed to destroy a company than what this board is currently sitting inside of." He paused. "The question before us today is simple. It is not whether Roland Collins is a good CEO in terms of revenue figures. It is whether this board is willing to absorb unlimited legal exposure, ongoing reputational collapse, and institutional shareholder revolt in order to protect a man who created every single one of these problems in under 3 minutes on a Tuesday morning." Nobody spoke. "I'll take the vote," Vance said. It wasn't close. The motion to remove Roland Collins as CEO of Voss Maison, effective immediately, passed with 1 abstention and no votes against. The 2 members who had flipped to Collins's side on Friday morning, whatever he had offered them, flipped back without hesitation. The evidence in front of them was simply too complete, too documented, and too public to argue against. The second motion addressed severance. Trevor had flagged the morality clause in Collins's contract to Vance's office 2 days earlier, a single paragraph, buried on page 41, that voided severance payments in cases of conduct constituting willful reputational harm to the company. The board's legal counsel confirmed its applicability. The motion to invoke it passed by the same margin as the first. Collins would leave with his salary through the end of the month and nothing else. The third motion was Vance's own. He proposed it quietly and without theater, that Petra Langwell's administrative leave be converted to permanent termination, effective the same day, and that the conduct records of all store employees present on Tuesday morning be formally reviewed with an eye toward recognizing those who had behaved with integrity. That motion passed unanimously. Vance called Collins at 3:22 p.m. and told him directly, without cushioning it. Collins said nothing for a long moment. Then, "You'll be hearing from my attorneys." "I expect so," Vance said. "Roland, for what it's worth, you did this to yourself." The call ended. Building security met Collins at his office door at 4 p.m. with 2 cardboard boxes and a facilities escort. He packed in silence, his assistant nowhere to be seen. The walk through the open-plan floor to the elevator, past every desk, every face that had worked for him, took 45 seconds. The board's public statement went live at 6 p.m. Voss Maison announces the immediate departure of Roland Collins from his role as Chief Executive Officer. This decision reflects the board's determination that recent conduct is incompatible with the values this brand claims to uphold. By 7 o'clock, his parking space in the building's private garage had already been reassigned. Sunday morning came quiet and clean. William had slept well, the deep, uncomplicated sleep of a man who had done what was right and could account for every step that had gotten him there. He was packed and dressed by 7, his single bag by the door, Celestine's photograph wrapped carefully in a soft cloth and placed on top of everything else before the zipper closed. He always packed her last. Trevor met him in the lobby at 7:30, his own bag already checked with the concierge, a coffee in each hand. He passed one to William without a word. They stood together in the marble lobby for a moment, watching the city move past the glass doors outside. Sunday slow, unhurried, a different rhythm from the city that had been grinding away at them all week. "Ready?" Trevor said. "More than," William said. They were in the back of the car, heading to JFK, when William's phone rang. Stuart Vance. William looked at the screen for 1 full second. Then he answered. "Stuart." "William." Vance's voice was different this morning. Lighter, somehow. The weight that had been sitting in it all week had shifted. Not gone, but different. The weight of a man dealing with a crisis had been replaced by the weight of a man trying to do something right. "I hope I'm not catching you too early." "You're not." "I'll be direct," Vance said. The board met again this morning, informally. "There is unanimous agreement that we want to restart deal discussions." A pause. "On your original revised terms, all 3 conditions. The DEI audit, the training protocols, the public acknowledgement. Everything you asked for." William looked out the window. The highway stretched ahead of them, flat and wide, the city giving way to the outer boroughs. "There's one addition," Vance continued. "This came from the board itself. It wasn't my suggestion, though I fully support it. We would like to establish a named endowment fund as part of the agreement. The Celestine Weston Fund, dedicated to supporting minority retail entrepreneurship across America. Voss Maison would be the founding contributor." A careful pause. "We understand that name means something significant to you. We don't use it lightly." The car was quiet, except for the sound of the road. Trevor, sitting beside William, was looking straight ahead. But William could see, in his peripheral vision, that Trevor had gone very still. William thought about a 19-year-old standing on a Chicago sidewalk in his best clothes. He thought about a silk scarf in a window, and 3 months of wages, and a woman who had smiled at a storefront and never once expected anything from him except that he show up and keep going. He thought about Celestine sitting across from him at a kitchen table on a Sunday morning, both hands around her coffee mug, not saying anything, just being there, just being there. He thought about all the young men and women who had walked into stores and been looked at the way he had been looked at on Tuesday. The ones who hadn't built empires. The ones who had just been people trying to buy something beautiful and had been told, without words, that beautiful things weren't for them. The Celestine Weston Fund. He let the name sit in the air for a moment. Then he said, "I'll have Trevor call you Monday." Not yes, not no. No hurry, no urgency, no clock running, just a man with all the time in the world, deciding on his own terms, in his own time, whether to extend grace to people who hadn't earned it yet, but might still be worth the investment. Vance said, "Of course. Thank you, William." "Take care, Stuart." William arrived at the store before her shift ended. He hadn't planned it. Or maybe he had, somewhere underneath the planning. JFK was 40 minutes from Manhattan, and he had asked Gerald to take a small detour. He stood outside Voss Maison's Fifth Avenue flagship in the quiet Sunday morning. The gold-trimmed doors closed, the store dark inside, the same sidewalk where he had stood on Tuesday after Clark walked him out. He stood there for a moment, just stood there. Then he took out his phone and made one more call, to Trevor, who confirmed what the board's instruction had specified. The person at that store who had behaved with the most integrity on Tuesday morning was to be recognized. Formally, publicly, immediately. Yolanda Breen. Monday morning, Yolanda arrived at work with her shoulders braced and her chin up, the posture of a woman preparing to absorb bad news with dignity. She had been preparing for it all weekend. She was called to the acting director's office within 10 minutes of arriving. She walked in, sat down, kept her face steady. The acting director slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. An offer letter. Interim store manager, Fifth Avenue flagship, effective immediately. With a salary that made Yolanda's breath catch quietly in her throat. The board was specific, the acting director said. They wanted it to be you. Yolanda walked to the break room afterward and called her mother. She didn't fully explain it. Couldn't, really, not in the 3 minutes before her shift officially started. She just said, "Mama, something good happened." And then she cried, quietly and completely, standing between the lockers and the coffee machine, letting it move through her. William's flight lifted off at 10:15 a.m. He watched New York fall away beneath him. The grid of it, the density, the impossible size of it growing smaller and quieter, until it was just light and coastline. And then, nothing but sky. He thought about the week, about Collins's hand hanging in the air on Fifth Avenue, about Vance's voice on the phone this morning, trying to get something right, about Clark Harrow sitting on the edge of his bed at midnight, reading the truth and deciding what kind of man he wanted to be, about Taylor, 36 hours of held breath and then one word in a text message, about Trevor sitting in a chair, waiting out the silence, because he understood that some silences need to finish on their own. And he thought about Yolanda, standing in a store in her pressed uniform, offering to bring a leather case in burgundy to a man she didn't know, because it was the right thing to do, and she didn't need a reason beyond that. He leaned back in his seat, closed his eyes. The Appalachians were somewhere below him now, those old, worn-down mountains, patient and permanent, shaped by forces so slow and so enormous that no single storm had ever been enough to stop them. He thought about a Chicago sidewalk in November. Cold air. His best clothes. $340 in his pocket, and a silk scarf in a window, and a door that had been closed to him before he ever reached it. He let it go. Not because it hadn't mattered. It had mattered enormously. It had shaped everything, every choice, every dollar, every careful and deliberate step he had taken for 25 years. But he had done what he came to do. He had walked back through that door. He had stood in that room. He had made them see him. Not the clothes, not the chain, not the sneakers. Him. And when they tried to make him disappear, he had simply declined. For the first time in 25 years, he let the Chicago sidewalk go. The plane climbed higher. Below him, the world kept turning. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.